Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fujitsu's user-initiated Windows 7 migration. Now, I see there's a few people still trickling in. I might sort of just let this slide sit there, and you can get our details, Twitter, and Malcolm's blog page. And we'll probably start in about 10 seconds if there's anyone else trickling in. Thanks, Malcolm.
Just start.
All right. I think we will kick off. Now, I've got to ask for a confession from everyone here. How many of you actually knew that Fujitsu did IT services? Or did you think we only did air conditioning? Get a show of hands, please. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why we asked Mark Taylor not to turn up. If he does, I'll make sure he gets off the stage. Now, one key thing that we should mention here, myself, Charles, and Malcolm over there, we're normally not let out to face humans. Our management keeps us pretty much locked in a basement with servers, with desktops, Hyper-Vs, everything around us, technology around us. And they say you're not allowed to talk to humans because we apparently speak in binary, and we often take people into the matrix where they don't know what they're lost because we're so used to talking to computers and servers. Now, hopefully, after today's session, we would have shown you that we can communicate to humans, and our management will let us out more often. And we'll also show you some really cool stuff and some mind-blowing use of Microsoft technology. Now, how can we assist you in saving money, saving time, and empowering your users? Now, the word user-initiated is really about giving the users the power to do what they want to do and go to Windows 7 when they want to go. Malcolm and myself will walk you through slides that will show you how you're saving money, saving time, and empowering your users. Who are Fujitsu desktop services? Everyone's asking the question, as I mentioned earlier. Everyone thinks we're an air conditioning company. I'd like to make sure that we'll clear this up here today. We offer a desktop services that covers a couple of key items. Number one, desktop management of around 150,000 end-user devices, physical or virtual. We offer a service of SOE engineering. Now, these guys are a dedicated team of SOE resources that pretty much look at the desktop from a physical and virtual sense. They look at delivering solutions around SOE imaging, desktop solutions, scripting, anything that touches the end user's desktop. That team pretty much engineers the solution. We also have an application packaging service. These guys, well, I think they're the experts in the world. Some of you might disagree, but I think they're the experts in the world because I haven't seen them not be able to package something. And they go from things like Microsoft AppV to Zen App to the ZenWorks packaging tool, and dare I say it, VMware StinApp. Now, we can't get away from the word virtual in today's world. The virtual client services team actually is a team of dedicated staff that look at anything from hosted applications, hosted desktops, and even up to the full VDI. We also have the mobile device management. Now, in today's world, everyone knows you've got an iPad, an iPhone, a BlackBerry device, a Windows Phone device, Androids. Malcolm, have I forgotten anything that you might like? No?
Windows Phone?
Yeah, yes, Windows Phone, I should mention that. And this team is dedicated to managing mobile devices. They use a range of products to help you with managing these devices. Lastly, I should mention the test and cert services. These guys are often the pain of Malcolm and my life and the rest of the teams because they are an independent group that sit there and question everything we do. They make sure what we output is a quality outcome. With that, I'm going to hand over to Malcolm to get you guys excited.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our check-in session here. Now, this picture here is the representation of my love for Windows XP, which consequently is not very much. Yes, Windows XP was great in 2001 when it came out, but now it's 10 years old. From our SOE engineering space, we're seeing more and more issues related to the use of the legacy operating system. One example, which was a real turning point for me in my hate for Windows XP, was when we got this new hardware model just recently, and it didn't have proper support for Windows XP. And what happened was Windows XP actually detected the SD card reader as a physical hard drive and tried to install the OS into the SD card, which then it wouldn't boot, and we had to copy the files off the SD card back onto the hard drive. And, so I was getting pretty frustrated dealing with Windows XP. However, I went to my management, the business, and I said, look, I want to get away from XP. I can't stand it any longer. I'm going to resign if we don't get rid of XP. But the business said, look, we're going to follow the standard approach, a cost-effective approach. We're going to migrate users as they refresh their hardware. However, looking at our hardware in the environment, that was looking at maybe a 3 to 4 year period before we would see everyone on Windows 7. That was way too long for me. So that's why we came up with the user-initiated process. The user-initiated process, our management gave us 3 design goals. Number 1, it had to be quick. We wanted the ability to migrate users during business hours, during their lunch breaks, during a meeting, without impacting the business. Number 2, it had to be informative. We wanted to have clear communication to the user before the migration, during the migration, and after the migration. On top of that, we wanted clear reporting for management so they could clearly see the status of the projects and how people were migrating. Third, it had to be a robust solution. There is absolutely no point in developing automation if you have to keep applying manual fixes to it. If we had this great automatic solution, but we had to keep sending engineers out to fix it, that's pointless. We wouldn't get any benefit. It had to be very robust. And in our internal use of this tool, we've had 100% success rate with migrations. And thanks to a very strong base in the MDT toolkit, or SCCM, it's so robust, even things like a power outage, it can handle and continue on from when power comes back on. So that's enough talking though, let's get in. And I'm going to use my manager here as a guinea pig, and we're going to migrate his machine to Windows 7. This is, by the way, all running in our production environment in Melbourne. This is not a fake lab we created. This is our production AD and Active Directory and image as well. Right, Charles, so if you can log in.
Right, I'm just about to send my manager an email that says,
right.
After this. All right, so it's just to sort of prove to everyone it's not in a lab, and this is live in production. You can see it's sent email, it's off and running. Now, as Malcolm said, the reason we chose to use myself as a guinea pig was he often came to me and said, mate, you've got to find time in your busy schedule, you've got to find time to go to Windows 7. I said, I don't have time by lunch. And he said, okay, go to it during lunch. I said, thank you. So here I am, I'm about ready off to go to lunch. I've closed my Outlook session, and in here is pretty much a web page that I've decided, or that I've been given an email link to that says, go here to go to Windows 7. Now this web page also gives me some information. It's given me some training documents, it's given me information about Windows 7, it's given me information about my company's SOE. Now, I've read these documents and I've said, okay, I'm about to head off to lunch, and I'll click on the go button because that's where I'm located.
Yep, so what we have here is we're just initiating from our SharePoint server a little process here which is going to check the machine, click run there, beautiful. And this is going to check the machine, make sure it's ready. We'll run our checks, and we provide, again, informative information to the user so they can see what's going on. And we'll see it's all good. We've now got information we provide to the user before they go to Windows 7. Now, I'm a techie. I do not care what goes here. This is why we provide the business with a tool to edit this however they want, and they can update it whenever they want. It's up to them to what they want to communicate here. On top of that, we also tell the user what applications will get migrated to the new platform, and they can accept or decline.
Yes, and as a user, I've read the information that I can see. You know, it tells me about what the support models are going to be like, how much service desk support will I get when I go to Windows 7, etc. And it also gives me more information right here, if I wanted to, about migration. Now, Malcolm, do you want to just talk about the cancel button, why we've left that there?
Yeah, so if a user reads that and they say, okay, I don't want to go to Windows 7 because my critical application is not listed here, that's fine. That information gets logged automatically into a SharePoint site with that reason, and the business can follow up those issues with people.
Okay. So
you're going to agree today, right?
I am, mate. Just for today.
Yeah.
Promise.
Okay, so what we have here, we've now got a message to the user. We've hooked into our back-end deployment system, and we're caching the image down to the machine locally. The user can continue to use their machine while the image is copying. So we've done this earlier, and the image is already copied down locally. We've got an icon on the desktop. Clicking the icon, we just do another check just to make sure nothing changed since the image was copied down, and then that's it, hit migrate.
All right, I'll check in on this later, but ideally what we're doing here is kicking it off, and it's going to pretty much, it's like a cake going to an oven. We'll come back to it during the rest of the slides.
Yeah, so what we have here, we've kicked into MDT. This is MDT 2010, all running locally. We do not need network connectivity at this point in the process. And we're hooking into Microsoft USMT, which is going to straight away start a hard link migration, which allows us to migrate the data, keeping it on the hard drive. We don't need any backup network storage. Excellent. So with that started, let's continue on with some more slides. While that's continuing, I just want to talk about some of the traditional approaches that we normally see in operating system migrations. Number one, we see the Big Bang approach. The Big Bang approach is typically you will get an image, you'll pixie boot all the machines on a Saturday, blow them away, maybe back up to network, deploy the image, restore, everything done in a weekend. Monday morning, everyone comes in. This sounds really great and easy. However, there are some problems with this approach, especially if you're doing large deployments and thousands of machines. The problem with the Big Bang approach is you need to have everything 100% ready on day one to go to Windows 7. You can't have some people going whenever they want. Also, you have the problem, a lot of people feel uncomfortable being pressured going straight to Windows 7 if they don't feel ready for it. And this process typically requires a lot more planning and additional infrastructure to do successfully. Number two, we have the handheld approach. The handheld approach is you get an engineer, they sit with the user, they manually back up the data, maybe to USB or to a network location. They re-image the machine, copy the data back, maybe they reinstall some applications, they help the user get set up. This problem with this process is it's very time consuming, and often one engineer maybe will do 3 machines a day with this method. Third of all, we have the cowboy. Yeehaw, bang, 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 format C, let's not do any planning, and let's just hope it all works. Now, the cowboy approach seems really simple at first. The problem is, if you skip planning for your Windows 7 deployment, If you don't think about applications, you will probably end up with a lot of problems, almost guaranteed. And problem with this approach is you actually end up with problems, not just after the migration, but often permanent problems in your environment. And we have seen that in some places. Number 4, we have the most popular method today, which is the swap out or the hardware refresh. Now, the swap out hardware refresh, very popular. It's simple. New hardware comes in, you put the new OS on it. However, problems with this approach is that your business doesn't get the benefits of Windows 7 today. And we've also seen Gartner reports that suggest most businesses using this method will not get to Windows 7 by 2014, which is end of support for Windows XP. So we came up with the user-initiated approach. Give power to the people. It's a very popular buzzword today, consumerization of IT. People are empowered to go and do when they want. This is a great advantage of this method. People go to Windows 7 when they feel comfortable, when they're ready. You've got the adventurous people, day one. They want Windows 7. They got Windows 7. This is increased satisfaction for those people. Then you have some people who are more cautious. They're really comfortable using the old style. They don't want to learn something new. They can wait longer. They can see everyone around them start going to Windows 7. Then when they feel comfortable, because they know all my colleagues are on it, I can go then when I'm ready. And that reduces the stress from those people. On top of that, we reduced deployment costs we did this Australia-wide, this solution, and we did not need to send deployment engineers around Australia. We hit multiple sites in South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, WA. We did not have to send people around. So, very good. Now I'll let Charles talk about the process that we use.
So, as Malcolm mentioned, the user-initiated process. What we did was we said, okay, Microsoft has given us a good base for the deployment and data migration tools. That's, in this case, we're using MDT and USMT. We decided there's a couple of things that we need to set up on top of that that'll help us get to Windows 7 from XP. We said there was a situation where a user wants Windows 7. We also need to cater for a pre-flight check and the local pre-stage and finally the migration. Now we'll go into a bit more in-depth in the next couple of slides around each of these layers and what they are and what they will do. Now Malcolm.
All right, can we just have a check, see how we're going?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see here, it's already kicked off the Windows 7 image deployment. Now, why we've chosen to use the setup.exe was we actually had a DOS window running ImageX, deploying the Vim, etc. And one of the feedbacks we had from all the users that saw that was, oh, it's a DOS window, and it's not fancy, it doesn't look nice, and I don't like what I'm seeing. Now, it's interesting because this user had actually installed Windows 7 at home by himself. Now, all we cared about was the end user's experience. It is a user-initiated process. The end user's experience is key, hence why we've left the setup.exe process, and you can see it actually shows them what it's doing each step of the way, it's expanding Windows files, etc. And they feel, going back to the key message, empowering end users, they feel like they're the ones installing Windows 7. All right, Malcolm. I want Windows 7 now. Now, okay, thanks. I want Windows 7 now. What's that about? I'm an end user that is ready to go to Windows 7. I've got it at home. I've got Office 2010 at home. I have all my applications appearing in the software catalog. I can go to Windows 7 today. How do I do that? I can either, do the old traditional way of logging a service desk request and sending an email to the service desk or contacting a desktop support person. However, being that we had a web page that had information, software information, knowledge-based articles, migration info, Windows 7 notes, SOE, particularly notes on the SOE, and a single page that gave us every much information we needed about the migration. It also had on the side, as you can see, a link based on the location. So if I was to go from St. Kilda Road, where I'm normally based, now don't stop me there, please. And if I ended up in North Ryde, for example, I could actually kick my migration off based on the location. The pre-flight check. Now, I was going to talk about this, but I decided that I think Malcolm should give you a bit of an under-the-hood look of what we've done with this thing.
All right, thank you, Charles. Now, with our pre-flight check that we do here, some of you might be thinking, MDT, SCCM, they already have built-in prerequisite check. Why are you creating your own? Isn't that reinventing the wheel? Yes, that's true, they have their own, but we needed something a bit more powerful, and this is where we built this tool. And also something that presented more clearly to the user what was occurring. Some of the benefits with our prerequisite check that we built, all this configuration, how this works, again, is done through a graphical backend that any manager or non-technical person can manage. On top of that, we can do additional checks that are not built into MDT or SCCM. For example, we can look at what applications are installed, what subnets people are on, what IP address range, whatever, and we can communicate to them they can't migrate or they can migrate. We also send all this data into SharePoint, and we use SharePoint workflow to automatically email the user if there's a problem, so they can correct it themselves. For example, if this check fails on available hard disk space, it automatically sends an email to the user and says, the reason your machine could not migrate was because you didn't have enough disk space. Please clear X number of gigabytes of data or whatever you need, and then you can continue the migration process. The second process we have is our local running of the image. Why did we make the image run locally off the hard disk? There's a few reasons. We wanted it to be a robust solution. So network drops out, we don't want that to be a problem. Also, we wanted to be able to handle lower bandwidth sites than is traditionally possible with network deployments. And we also wanted to give users very accurate timings on how long migrations would take. So with a local image, we know that every migration we've done has run under 60 minutes. There's no dependency on server or network performance once the migration is kicked off. Our second stage in the blue there, privilege elevation. What's that about? This is a service we built that allows a standard non-admin user to launch MDT or the SCCM process. Although, in fact, with SCCM, you don't require this. SCCM has this built in. The advantage of us building this is for customers without SCCM, we can still get the same functionality of user initiated. Finally, we have the desktop shortcut. That's simple. People know how to click an icon. That's all they have to do, click the icon, click agree. Nothing to think about. They don't have to make any other decisions than that.
Okay, so one question, Malcolm, that I think might come about everyone's thinking here is, what happens if I kicked it off the migration from the web page today, and I decided to kick it off 6 weeks later? How does that affect the image, the scripts, the tools that we need to go migrate in the background?
Yep, so when they click the desktop icon, it can also refresh any files that have changed if necessary.
Excellent.
Migration kickoff, it's as simple as David Beckham kicking a goal. It's a very simple process. I think that's it. It just works, and we've done it thousands of times. Deployment. Again, we're using freely available Microsoft tools. These tools are available free from Microsoft. MDT, USMT. How's that an advantage? With USMT data migration, we don't have to pay licenses for per user data migration, maybe that you would have to if you're using third-party tools. On top of that, it's very fast using the hard link process for refreshing the same hardware, and quite reliable as well. Now, we're going to take a look at some of the SharePoint reporting that I talked about. So if we can bring that up, Charles. Right, so this is our live SharePoint. We can see people that are being migrated, and we can see some machines that have failed to migrate. And if we can open that up, Charles. Just click the link there.
I have. Yep.
Okay, so we can see all this information automatically gets logged in SharePoint from our MDT or SCCM task sequence. So we can see what site the person's at, and we can see why they failed. Their hard drive partition is too small. And again, that will be communicated to the user. And it could be, let's say they didn't have enough RAM. And then that would, again, automatically go to SharePoint workflow to somebody to order RAM. So very powerful. We can report also, on top of that, it logs the timings. So if we go back to our slides, one thing that we've done with our SharePoint is that we actually look at what time the user clicked the link on the intranet, what time it took for them to get the image. This is the pre-stage process. Then we also look at when they click the icon on the desktop, then what time their machine is finished onto Windows 7. All those times are accurately recorded and can be reported on by site or by subnet or however you want, by hardware model. So these stats I'm pretty happy with. Pre-stage across our environment, across thousands of machines, we found an average of 49 minutes to get the image onto the machine. Importantly, the user can continue to use their computer while this is happening. So this is no downtime for the user. Second, when they click the desktop icon, we've had an average of 40 minutes, and all of those have been under 1 hour, and some as quick as 30 minutes. This is a very rapid process and really allows us to do this during business hours and very cost effectively. I'll let Charles talk about the cake.
So, thanks, Malcolm. Why we put this picture of a cake up here, reason we've done this is we feel that Microsoft gives you amazing tools, scripts, the MDTs, the USMTs, etc. Quite often we read in blogs all over the place, everyone tends to butcher and edit the scripts, changes something, and then when Microsoft releases an update, you see a blog post saying, oh, my MDT stopped working. And if you look at the next line, it says, from the Microsoft person saying, what have you done? I've edited, for example, the light touch script. Well, what we did when we looked at building the solution, we said, we're not going to touch the Microsoft scripts. We're not going to edit any of that. We will build and layer our tools, our scripts, and our solution on top of the Microsoft solution. This way, Microsoft releases an update, Microsoft releases a feature pack or a service pack or some kind of update to the tool that we're using, be it MDT or SCCM, the core functionality of the product wouldn't affect, or the update to the core functionality of the product wouldn't affect our solution. Now, Malcolm,
While
I
that's
think
occurring, can we just have a look at
I was just going to ask
process?
you to flip over that, mate. Number 3. That's why we normally never let him out to humans.
All right, so here we've got our process progressing.
And just click on it, Malcolm, because as Malcolm mentioned about making it robust, one thing we wanted to do was when a user kicks it off, we wanted to make sure that they didn't interrupt the core functionality of the process. And how we did that was we thought, okay, we could lock the screen. But really, if I was a user and I saw a locked screen, I'll be going, okay, shall I call the service desk? What's happening? Is it locked the screen? I don't know. What we decided was we said, okay, let's create an overlay that requires a password that only the support teams or the deployment engineer that needs to maybe attend to it can and know the password. This way, it lets the user know what's happening, the screen's not locked, and they can see the progress right through of whatever's happening. Thanks, Malcolm. So, how did we add, or what did we add to the icing on top? Now, we did about 10 to maybe 20 things, and we thought we'd pick the 4 things that we thought might excite everyone in the room. Now, we looked at how do we get you ready for Windows 7? We looked at how do you migrate data that when you're swapping from an old PC to a new PC and you have problems with network storage or you can't allocate network storage. We also then looked at how can we give users productivity tools that will help them do the simple things that we as IT administrators often think, oh, we don't need to do that for the user. They know that, they'll figure it out. And lastly, the thing that I get most excited about is the mobility center. And we'll go through each in depth in the next slides. Windows 7 readiness. Now, I have to ask this question. How many of you out there has seen the raw data that you get from the App Compat Toolkit? Can I get a show of hands?
Hey, Charles, I've seen that. And my goodness, that is the most horrible layout to try and get the data out of that. You've got to look through each application line by line, right-click properties, look through 10 tabs of information. Absolutely great information, absolutely useless presentation for high-level overviews.
Thanks. And as everyone saw, Malcolm was so passionate, he ran out from behind the counter. Or should I say unpassionate about the raw data. What we did was we said, okay, how good is this data? Yes, it's useful to techies that are looking at in-depth information. But if I was a CIO and I'm sitting there and I need to make an informed decision of saying, I'm on XP today, I have these apps, I have these types of hardware. How can I go to Windows 7 or how can I look at a quick report that tells me I need to upgrade applications, I need to upgrade some hardware, and these apps I can safely take across. Now, what we did was we built a custom tool that extracts the data, presents it into a really nice executive summary, and the CIO or IT management or a board of IT architects, etc., can look at this and make an informed decision. However, and we didn't forget people like Malcolm, we didn't forget the techies out there, we made sure that in this report we also kept the raw data that a techie could look at and go in depth into each section. User state migration tool. Now, how many of you have used the Windows Easy Transfer Wizard? Can I get a show of hands? Everyone did. Now, it's great. It does what it's supposed to do. You can run it on XP, and you can restore the data on Windows 7. You can do it on a Windows 7 to Windows 7. Works for what it's designed to do. How annoying was it, though, that you grabbed some settings that you didn't need? And can I get another show of hands that you got settings you didn't want? Yeah, well, what I thought about it when I used it was, okay, grabbed all my data. What if I want to exclude some things? What I did was I came into the office, said to Malcolm and the team, I need a tool that will let me do 3 things, or for the end user really. I want a tool that I, as the IT administrator, can configure easily to exclude stuff, to include stuff, and easily do this through a GUI interface. And that's that screenshot on the on my right here, which is showing what you can exclude and include. And then I said, I wanted a tool that also let the user choose where they can put the data directly when they're kicking off the migration. So what we did is we gave the users an option. They can put it on a USB drive. They can put it directly on a network if there's network storage provisioned. And they can also put it directly onto the new PC if they knew what the new PC's name was. Lastly, I said, okay, as every user or every IT administrator knows today, if you don't give a user or you don't tell a user what's happening, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and go, I can't see what's happening. Can I log an incident? So hence we gave them a nice progress bar. And if you can see what that's doing, that progress bar is actually showing each profile on the PC, and it actually runs as a standard user. Now, this one here, Malcolm will get really excited, so I think I'll hand it over to him to talk to, mate.
Thanks, Charles. Just going to show some samples of utilities that we build to help improve the end user experience. On the top left, we have an example of a tool we built, automatic proxy switching tool. This will automatically detect what location you're in, and switch to the appropriate proxy, and it can be pre-configured through group policy or by the users themselves. One cool thing that we've done here is we've utilized brand new Windows 7 technology. This uses Windows task schedule event triggers that are not available in XP. What does this mean? This program does not run as a service. It does not run when the user logs on. It only runs when the network IP address changes. And that means we're not having something running in the background all the time. On the top right corner, we've got an example of our information panel. This is just a simple panel for service desk. People can give information. On top of that, what we've done to improve the experience, we've got the real-time network information. This will automatically change. If you unplug a cable, for example, it will change in real time, and it will tell you what connections the user is on, and it will also show VPN as well, if that's available. The bottom right, we've got an example of Windows gadgets that we built. This is a simple gadget. It's built using JavaScript. So yes, we are ready for Windows 8 when it comes with its JavaScript goodness. Local staff search. This is just a simple gadget. So users, whatever application they are in, they can hit Windows G, bring up the gadget, type in someone's name, and it brings them the phone number, photograph, and other details about the person. So those are examples of some of the tools that we built. Now for the Mobility Center, I'll let Charles talk about that.
Thanks, Malcolm. Why I said to Malcolm I want to talk about the Mobility Center is because when I first hit the Windows key X, and I'm sure most of you have, I saw this nice little Mobility Center pop up, and I said, oh, look, it's awesome. It comes up on a laptop. Now, when I saw it, I said, okay, Microsoft gives us 8 tiles initially and says, okay, here's the documentation. Here's how you build new ones, and you can go up to a maximum of 8. Now, we chose 3 key things, and they are the auto proxy. If you were a mobile traveler, a worker who's really mobile and you travel a lot and you go to different sites, it's really hard to remember each proxy setting or each network setting, etc. That's why we've put the proxy tool in the Mobility Center. You can launch it quickly from there. We also then looked at our users and said they really use, the VPN and the Citrix sessions. Hence, we added that there. Now, we found that you can add up to 8, as I said, and really it's about giving the end users the really good experience. And the feedback we had was, oh, this is really good. In the next wave of the update of this, can you add, item A, B, C, D, etc.
Now, do we just give those 3 tiles to anyone?
Yes.
But we can customize it to
Absolutely.
However the customer wants. We can change it completely.
Now, I guess the main thing we got asked to stand up here and talk about what we've done is because we've used everything that Microsoft has provided. We've looked at this and said, how can we get you ready for Windows 7? Well, you can use the App Compat Toolkit, the Microsoft Assessment Planning Toolkit to take you, understand your software and your hardware. We looked at how can we build the image? Well, Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, PowerShell, Visual C# programming to build the tools and additional stuff we needed. We also used, obviously, Windows 7 Service Pack 1. We then looked at things like how can we optimize the desktop. We used Advanced Group Policy Management, AppV, etc. Now, and then it came to, okay, how can we stand up here and demo this really well? Hence why what you were seeing earlier on that machine was actually running off a Hyper-V server. I guess the key message we're trying to show or bring out today is that, with all the ability to save money, save time, empower the users, the real key thing is if Microsoft has provided the tools that already talk, it's quite easy to sit there and make it sing and dance. And in the background, while I was talking and while Malcolm was talking, you can see that it's actually migrated my machine off to Windows 7. Another question you might ask is, why do we have a black background? Because when you have a light blue background and you have the disclaimer text, you can't read it.
Thanks, Charles.
All right, I'll log on.
Let's have a login. Again, as we said earlier, this is in our production environment, our production Windows 7 image. And the migration has completed.
Hopefully I don't get my password wrong.
And this is the first login process, and we'll just, active setup and whatever might be running here. And Charles would have just actually got an email on his phone as well. automatically, that would have told him your migration has completed. So if you were away from your computer, you would have got an email if you're on a smartphone that it said your migration is complete automatically.
As you can see, I've got pretty much all the applications that I had reinstalled. I also got all my files and everything on there. And I suppose the key thing is to launch Outlook and make sure that my PhDs are there, because that is the biggest thing that everyone will shout about when they migrate is, where's my PhDs?
Yeah, I think Charles here spends about 20 hours a day in Outlook, so
yeah, I do.
It's important that this thing launches for him.
So you can see over here, PhDs are there, and in the background, my mail's obviously syncing now as it's in cache mode.
Check your email.
And fairly shortly, I should get an email that says, welcome to Windows 7. Now, this was a really neat way for us to tell the end user, here's how you can complete a survey, here's what's the guide on your Windows 7 SOE, there's a known issues register, there's also the security model that we've applied for the SOE in the environment, and lastly, some Office 2010 training. There's also information about how you can contact the service desk. And I suppose I should do this. That's my manager standing somewhere in the crowd, and my general manager to say, well, job. Thanks. All right. I think we'll flip back to the slides now, Malcolm.
Yep.
What was the biggest challenge, Malcolm?
Yep, so we did want to talk about, of course, as with any solution, there are some things that you need to be concerned about. And one thing we learned from this process very early on in our pilot phase was that communication is absolutely critical for this to be a success within your organization. Yes, it's fully automatic. Yes, it works, but still communicating users what they expect, what they're getting, that they understand the whole process. A lot of thought has to go into this process. What we did initially, our initial communication during pilot was just via email and the intranet. We rapidly learned that that was not enough communication because many people don't, they just skim over the emails. So what we did to resolve that was that we ramped up the communication efforts. We built short videos, like a 3-minute video, that would show the user the process end to end, so they could watch that and they would know what to expect. Exactly, they were very comfortable then. They saw, okay, it's very simple. I don't have to do anything complicated. I've seen it end to end. On top of that, we also met with the managers within the organization and workshopped with them to let them know what to expect so they could communicate them onto their teams. So, important thing, any user-initiated system, whether it's deploying an OS or even deploying software, anything user-initiated, to get the full benefits, you absolutely have to think about the communication and to make sure your end users can understand and utilize the full benefits of this. So with that being said, that's it. We've migrated a machine pretty rapidly from XP to Windows 7. All the data's intact, and that's good. We'd just like to open up now. We've got 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions I'd like to ask. Yes? No, we don't. We can do it on a single partition or on a dual partition, either. But we don't format the hard drive. What we do is we remove all the files except for the, we remove all the files except for the image. So if we're on a single partition, we'd put the image under a C-mini-NT folder and it won't get removed. However, one thing, just to clear this up, we don't have to do the local caching if people don't want to do it. Some people might not like that idea, although we've found it works really well. If you don't want to do that, we can actually initiate it from a network deployment as well. So we can just communicate directly or run the image via network as well. So we can do both. But it can be single or dual partition. Both, yep. Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good question. Did we go straight to x64? There was actually another session just at the same time on x64. I think there's a few things you need to take into consideration if you want to go to x64. My first point is don't go to x64 just for the sake of it. For a lot of people, you're not going to get very minimal benefits just going straight to x64. In our environment, 32-bit was the default. Why was it the default? The reason was simply we had lots of printers that didn't have 64-bit print drivers available. It was simple as that. It was going to be too much hassle. And we'll also keep in mind that most of the benefits for x64 you don't get until, for example, you're working with files larger than 2 gigs with 64-bit applications. Until you're reaching that kind of work, you don't get a benefit. However, we do have people on x64 in our environment, and they're mostly developers or people working with CAD or those type of applications that are very memory intensive. But this solution, by the way, does work with either 32-bit or 64-bit. Yep. Any other questions?
Right at the back, I think.
Yes?
What percentage of your user base has done the migration?
Yep, so we've now got about 50% of people on Windows 7 in a 6-month period. That was, if we had gone with a hardware refresh, we would have been looking at maybe 3 to 4 years for that to have occurred. One thing, so we've got about 2,500 people on Windows 7 now. Yep, through this process. Is there any other questions? Yep. Yep, the lowest, we've put it on, actually, I've tested it on hardware even lower than the recommended by Microsoft, and it does work, but it's not very good. You can actually deploy it even on 512 mega RAM, but we wouldn't recommend that to be usable, because when you add mainly applications like Office, then it slows down.
Yeah,
Now,
we did about, I think the lowest, we picked the optimum setting, which was at 2 gig of RAM, 2 gig processor, etc. But we did initially during the pilot do at a minimum of 1 gig RAM and 1 gig processor as well.
Yeah, we found some people were happy with 1 gig of RAM, 1 gig of CPU, but it really depends how they use it. And we did have some people complain, so we upped the minimum. Actually, it was to 2 gig of RAM and 1 gigahertz CPU. That was what we set as our minimum internally. That being said, some people have used lower and happy with it, but it depends on the usage of the machine. Yep. Anything else, if that's it?
There's someone in the left-hand, right-hand corner.
Oh, sorry, can you speak up? I can't hear. For 32-bit and 64-bit? Yeah, how do we handle both?
Yeah, so I sort of heard the question pretty much. What we did there was we had this available for the user. So the key thing was we wanted to empower the user and enable the user to go to Windows 7 when they want it and if they want it. Now, what we also had was a cutoff date that said if and when by this time, we don't have people or 90% of the environment or 95% of the environment on Windows 7, we will actually do a actual full deployment to that remaining number of users.
For the actual question about the XP and Windows 7 support at the same time, I think the key thing is we haven't found it a major issue. We get so many less support calls on Windows 7. What we do is people who have issues on XP, we tell them, okay, migrate to Windows 7 and we'll help you there, because we're really encouraging a lot of people, if they've got problems on XP, to go to Windows 7 because it is much more robust and we have much less support calls on our Windows 7 machines. But from our support's perspective, we have to keep a VM or something of the XP image so that we can look at both from a support side. All right. So I think that's it. If anybody wants to
there's one last question, Malcolm.
Yeah.
One last question right at the top.
Yep. Yes, we have already doing that, yes. It goes through their own SharePoint server. Yep, that's correct. We've already integrated this into, I think, at least 2 other customers. 4 customers, their SharePoints. So yeah, we definitely can do that. We've actually designed the solution so it's very easy to plug in. For example, the connection to SharePoint, again, is all configured through a GUI tool. So the engineer going to do it, he just fills in the SharePoint details for that customer. We don't have to recode it for different customers.
Yeah, and there's various stages to the SharePoint that can be leveraged. In this instance, we use the whole thing end to end, from the kickoff, the information to the full migration. But there's various stages that you can use. You may just want this as a way to collect application information about your environment, and that's what we've had one customer do.
Yeah, we've seen some customer, they just want it for users to agree that they want to go to Windows 7. They get it in SharePoint, and then they do the big bang with all those people who agreed they wanted to go. So there's different ways you can do different components.
Absolutely.
Yep, we can work with any deployment tool. If there's SCCM, we'll obviously use the built-in functionality of SCCM. But the advantage, because we based it also on MDT, we don't require it. So if somebody is on a different deployment tool, we can use pretty much anything. Yep. So we have customers with ZenWorks and Altiris and everything, pretty much.
Okay.
Yep. So that's it, and we'll be around for the rest of TechEd. We're happy to.
Yeah. So before Malcolm gets too excited, I should remind everyone that the reason we were here was to tell you how we can help you save time, save money, and empower your users. Now, I guess the other key message was, if you have an existing Microsoft investment or any other tool, as Malcolm mentioned, we're not going to come in there, or we're not going to say you have to do it this way. We will absolutely work with whatever technologies they are. But if you had the existing Microsoft investment, it just makes it a lot easier. So thank you for listening to us ramble on. I think we just got to click a couple of slides through. There's an opportunity to win a touch mouse if you fill in the evaluation form online about how you thought we went.
Yep, this is a really nice mouse, so certainly recommend you fill in that evaluation as soon as possible.
Next one, Malcolm. Yep, and this is obviously some
QR reader, you've all read that. Virtual Academy today. That's, again, that's also in your bag, I think.
And lastly, we're on Twitter. We tweet too much, I reckon, sometimes.
I think I've got a permanent Twitter brain feed. Like, I don't stop, so.
And so feel free to email us, and we'll be here in TechEd for the rest of the week, and we can catch up with you guys when you need. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent, thank you. Have a good day.